Today we're back with my 1997 Volvo 850R, and it is time for a spring update. As you can see, I am back on the 17-inch Volans wheels. Gone are those 16-inch BBSs, at least for the summer, and I figured I'd put some proper tires on this 850R and feel out what all of my suspension changes and tweaks, how that all performs with some actual grippy rubber. So, Continental hooked me up with some Extreme Contact Sports. These are 215/45/17s, slightly taller sidewalls than the recommended tire for the Volvos. These actually fit really well on here, no rubbing, and they grip awesome. Very quiet, very comfortable performance tire, and I think in an older vehicle like this Volvo 850R, kind of a transformative tire that really brings it up to date to at least give it modern levels of grip and handling. And with all the suspension changes and tweaks that I've made on this car the last year, I'm very excited to see how it drives. So I've already put a few miles on these tires. They're kind of broken in, so we can push them a little bit harder today. I'm really excited to get back on these 17-inch wheels. I think the car looks just so much better on these Volans wheels. I did get them powder coated and refinished last year. I just never got around to mounting tires on them because I already had the 16-inch BBSs, and I didn't really drive this car much last year, so that is another reason. Otherwise, not much has really changed. The Volvo 850R has been running strong. Drove it quite a bit the last few weeks, getting that old 2020 gasoline out of it, but otherwise, this thing is solid. Probably due for another oil change here. The service light is on there. That'll go off in a minute. Let's take this Volvo 850R for a drive. So if you don't know already, I bought this in October of 2018 on Bring a Trailer. It is a 5-speed manual swapped car. I've been looking for one for ages, and very happy to finally have one. I also had a 1996 850R that I sold for $1 more than what I bought this one for. And I will say the manual makes all the difference here. So much more fun to drive. Home sweet home. I do miss these Volvo 5-cylinders. They were such great engines. 243 horsepower, 250 pound-feet of torque. I have a European manual, 5-speed manual tune on this car, so it's making a little bit more power than the US spec cars did. And of course, it's tuned for the manual transmission, so the revs drop. There's not as much rev hang as there was on my automatic ECU. As always, all the mods on this car are in the description, but just as a little refresher, I updated all of the suspension components on this 850R. So everything from Endlinks to sway bars from IPD to the comprehensive suspension kit from FCP Euro, everything is brand new except for the OEM 850R springs. Everything else is fresh. So we've got Bilstein dampers on here, and those seem to be working very well. They are the touring shocks and struts. Nice and comfortable, but also they handle quite well at the limit, as we'll see on some of these corners up here. On first impressions, I'm pretty impressed with these Continental tires. I've had my eye on these for quite a while, and I think it would just be kind of a perfect fit for the 850R. I want a tire that will work well in the rain if I ever take this out to the track or just am driving in the wet, and something that's comfortable and quiet. I don't necessarily need a hardcore Dureza Star spec or something like that on this car, but I would like to have a little bit extra grip. This still has the open front differential, so anything that helps me put my power down a little bit more is always welcome. The other set of tires I had on this 850R were the Cross Climate Pluses from Michelin, and those were 205 55/16s. A really nice daily driver setup, but honestly kind of squishy around the corners. So it's basically a winter tire compound in an all-season tread pattern, and did great in the rain, did great in the colder months, and those will definitely go on once the weather cools down again in the fall, because you don't want to be running these Continentals in the winter. I still love this thing. This car is just so much fun. I'm actually very happy with it in its current state of setup and tune. Stock exhaust is back on. I think it still sounds good, but it's not as droney as the IPD turbo back that I had on here. I lost a little bit of power removing that nice high flow downpipe, but that's okay. I don't really care too much about power anyway. I care about balance. And now this 850R is beautifully balanced on these grippy Continentals. It is fun to drive. I might do an autocross or two in this car this summer. My first car was a 95 naturally aspirated Volvo 850 with a 5-speed. And I autocrossed that thing a ton. That's kind of the car that I learned to drive in. And it was a good learning car. Not ideal, of course. Never won many races just because it wasn't quite spec'd right for the classes that I was entering. But it was still a lot of fun, and these 850Rs do handle and perform incredibly well for what they are. I thought about getting a tune on this, and we'll see how it goes this summer. I would like just a little bit more power. I do miss the power level that I had on the previous ECU. This is the M4.4, and it is tunable from Vast Performance, which is great. So I might do a custom tune on this. I do like the idea of having it at the stock power levels for just extra reliability and less maintenance, but we could turn things up a little bit on the stock turbo and see how it goes. I don't want to go deep into power mods though, because right now this car is just, like I said, really well balanced and really nicely set up for the mods that it has. And if you add too much power, it kind of upsets that whole balance that I've achieved here. So I want to keep it reasonably conservative, which I know is boring, but that's how I like my cars. Still lots of rattles and dashboard clunks. That's just how these 850Rs are. Oh, the grip here is just awesome. Super predictable. I love the feel from these tires. Despite this thing being shaped like a brick, it still has a very impressive drag coefficient of 0.29. It's one thing that they engineered into these 850Rs. They're actually pretty aerodynamic. Of course, the 850R has a bunch of changes from the standard 850s. In 1995, they introduced the 850 T5R. The R actually stands for refined, which I never knew before. Just found that out. And in 1996, they got rid of the T5R name and just called it the 850R. They added a bunch of luxurious amenities. They dropped the yellow color, which was a bit of a shame. These are pretty much fully loaded 850s. They have the premium sound system, an extra 200 watts from the stereo, heated seats. There were only a couple options, like heated rear seats. They only brought automatics to the United States, which is why this manual is such a coveted car for me personally, as they don't really exist here except for in Europe. In Europe, they did have an 850R that had an uprated M59 transmission. This is an M56, and that had a limited slip front differential, which was very cool. And those 850Rs had 250 horsepower with that uprated transmission. I bought this car 2 years ago for $8,900, and since then we don't have a lot of data points to go off of. Not a lot of cars have sold since then on Bring a Trailer or on public auction sites that I've found, but we've seen a few cars go for a little bit higher that were not Volvo 850Rs, but were a little bit lower in mileage. This car has 162,000 miles. So I think it's good to see these cars finally gaining a little bit more value in the used market. I think that gives people some incentive to take care of them, restore them a little bit, keep them in good shape. They are fantastic cars to drive. The best way I can describe this 850R is it's just modern enough in terms of feel to be a nice daily driver, but it still has that engaging steering. It's a hydraulic rack. You get that feel of an old school car from the 90s. It's just refined a little bit more, which is just awesome. Get a clear entrance ramp here, we'll see how these Continentals grip. I think we're going to be in good shape. Oh yes. Front sway bar is set to stiff. Oh yes. 60 miles an hour, no problem. A little rough. Yeah, I like these Continentals. They have a really nice progressive breakaway point. They're not too loud at the limit. Excellent steering feel, of course. I mean, again, hydraulic rack. And a lot of mechanical grip. They seem to have achieved a really nice balance between sidewall stiffness and overall ride comfort and quietness with this tire. Whereas before, the previous generation Extreme Contact Sports I felt were a little too squishy, and they definitely improved upon that with this new generation. Some more history on the 850R. Porsche had a hand in developing this car. Did a little bit of work on the interior, these seats, and the tuning for this 850R ECU. Up to the boost a few pounds. Back in the early and mid 90s, Porsche was pretty strapped for cash, so they would kind of hire out some of their engineers to do development work for other manufacturers. And Volvo and Porsche collaborated on this 850R, which I think is pretty cool. Oh, yes. This is just point, aim, shoot now. It really corners. I'm gonna have to take this on a road trip down to Kentucky or do some good back road driving in this 850R. I used to have a 2010 Mark VI Volkswagen GTI, and I did a few modifications to that. I had Michelin Pilot Super Sports and a rear sway bar and, nice light set of wheels, upgraded brakes. And that was a really fun car to drive. But I kind of feel that these 850s, when properly set up, are almost a little bit more capable, and they handle as well, if not slightly better than the GTIs did. For a front-wheel drive car, this is a surprisingly well-balanced and neutral chassis. We'll have to take this out to the track at some point this year and see how it really holds up. I want to upgrade the brake lines, and I think for just a few laps it would hold up pretty well. Such a great car. If you guys can find a clean or decent 850R, I would highly recommend manual swapping it because it just makes all the difference. Alright guys, we'll walk around this one more time and wrap up the video there. Great first impressions on these tires. Need to clean off all the mounting goop. That's kind of embarrassing. I haven't washed this thing since October. I've just been driving it. So it's probably good time for a nice detail here these next few weeks. Yeah. I like this thing because it's not perfect. It's got a few scuffs and scratches and dents and chips, so I don't feel as bad about driving it. I did recently learn that this is the last Volvo 850R sedan produced. It has the highest VIN of all of them, so that makes it a little bit more rare and special and valuable, but I still want to keep driving this thing and putting on the miles and enjoying it. We're working with 850R Registry on Instagram to get some certification paperwork from Volvo. Apparently they have a historic branch that kind of will authenticate stuff, and so that's kind of cool. I mean, I could just saran wrap it and seal it away for years, but I don't know. These cars are meant to be driven, and that's what I'm going to keep doing. Alright guys, thanks for watching. That's it for this one. We'll wrap it up there. Another nice day for a drive in the 850R, and just some updates on what it's been like on these new tires. We'll see you guys later. Take care.